Hey guys, David here. Welcome back to the DGR podcast. This is episode 102. I'm going to do a solo podcast today. I don't have that long because I need to go and meet Mimi, a new member of staff, a new physio at DGR. So I am running a little bit late, so apologies, Mimi. But I'm going to do a solo, guys. Here is some of the topics that we are going to get cracking straight into. I'm fresh off the back of about like 4 to 5 hours sleep last night, so I'm feeling incredibly refreshed. It's like I'm after spending a week at a spa in Bali with my 5 hours sleep versus what would have been 2 hours sleep maybe in previous days or weeks maybe. So there was a question from Fergal. It was kind of like a 3-part question just around groin and abdominal pain. And is there different approaches for someone who has completely overloaded themselves versus someone that looks like there's significant movement issues at play? 2-part question. And then the other part is like, where does strength come in? And I'll read the question when I'm ready to answer it. Then the second question is more about the pelvis. So it's around anterior and posterior tilting of the pelvis. And this person says, I know that we need to be able to move from an anterior to a posterior tilt, but, and there's no right or wrong, but which is worse to be stuck in, do you think? Is it worse to be stuck like more posterior tilt or anterior tilt? And then the third one is, who do you look up to in the industry? So let's crack into each of those questions. Which one should we start with? I will let you decide. If we had some kind of interactive way of doing that. But let me see. Pelvis one. Who do you look up to? Let's start with Fergal's one, because that's going to be the one that I need to unpack a little bit and probably can't answer particularly well, to be honest, because it's a tricky question. So the first one, groin or abdominal pain. Is there different approaches for someone who has completely overloaded themselves versus someone that looks like there's significant movement issues at play? And then the second part, where does strength come in? Okay, Fergal, first of all, so groin, chronic like groin, and obviously it's going to be chronic, I presume, that you're discussing. Yeah, I presume. I'm going to take a look at. I'm going to take it from that angle, because if it's just like their groin or their abs are sore, or that anterior hip region is sore, anterior pelvis region is sore, just like as of 3 days ago, then like time should just clear that up, I think. But I'm going to presume it's more chronic that you're talking about. And first of all, those are very tricky issues to deal with. It can be a very sensitive area all around the anterior pelvis. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of tissue kind of crossing, and there's a lot of like muscular attachments on the front of the pelvis, and fascia and skin, and obviously sensitive reproductive parts and all of this stuff. So there's a lot of like sensitivity around that area. So first of all, really tricky part of the body to deal with. Potentially, I won't say the hardest, like that's because it just depends. One of the hardest when it gets chronic to deal with, because you can flare it up quite easily, I think. But so the first part is, there are different approaches for someone who's completely overloaded themselves versus someone that looks like there's significant movement issues at play. So what I would say is, most of these issues are someone who has like significantly overloaded. Not all of them, but a lot will come with like an intense period of load. And that goes for most issues. Not all. Again, not all. Like pain is obviously complex. It can crop up from anywhere for any reason. But a lot of the time, especially with athletic population, these issues crop up when there has been like a significant spike in load. Whether that's like, okay, we were in the off season, I didn't do too much, and then we went into preseason and the manager was an idiot or the coach was an idiot, and we just like absolutely hammered us. That's where you'll see most injuries or kind of niggles starting to crop up. And then like in season, we went from doing 1 game a week to 2 games a week type of thing. That's obviously where you'll see a lot of issues crop up. So with regards to this, is there different approaches? like yes and no. Every single versus someone who looks like there's significant movement issues at play. I did an Instagram post on this recently where I spoke about like root cause versus scorched up earth. So in it, I spoke about how I try not to talk about root cause anymore. I find it a little bit disingenuous when people talk about root cause. And I much prefer to go scorched earth when I'm working with someone. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't. I know some people might interpret that as like, okay, you're not actually looking for the issues here. I am. If someone comes to me and they say I've had groin and pubic pain or whatever for 12 months, like I'm going to be asking a lot of questions around what happened then. Tell me about what happened with your training then. Tell me about previous injuries so I get to know the whole picture. Tell me about your life. Did you have a very stressful period in work? Were you unwell? Was there a significant change in your life or life stressor? Like that's really important. You need to be aware of what happened around that time. Not because you're trying to find the root cause and say like, okay, you had an ankle injury 6 weeks before, then you had the groin problem. Like the ankle is the root cause. No, but you are looking for contributing factors, and sometimes there will be factors that like really rear their head, and they're obvious enough factors. Sometimes it might be like, okay, there was a significant spike in load here. So you've been playing this sport or doing this whatever for 5 years without having a groin problem. So we can say like there's significant movement issues at play if you want to say that. But on the flip side, this person didn't have groin issues for the last 5 or 20 years, and now they have groin issues. They probably didn't move that much differently in the day of the when this issue first started, but maybe the load just went through the roof. So it's almost always like a spike in load as a contributing factor, but you do need to, just because you're not saying root cause, like this old ankle injury is the root cause of your issue, or this, you went through a divorce with your wife and so there was life stressors, this is the root cause of the issue. Just because you're not saying root cause doesn't mean you shouldn't be acutely aware of the contributing factors. I think it's really important. Don't ignore those, and you should map out, especially with chronic issues, you should map out a timeline with someone, like what happened. That's why we have intake forms as well, because it helps jog people's memory, and it helps them, like we ask specific questions around like, did anything happen around that time? Please tell us about your injury history, like life questions, questions around alcohol, questions around mindset, different things like that. They are really important. You Because they just help you direct more focus as a coach or clinician to a particular area. Just they might answer one question in a specific way, and it might direct you to spend a little bit more time in that session having a conversation with someone rather than jumping straight in, having a conversation about like life or stress or whatever, rather than just jumping straight into exercises. So is there different approaches? So Fergal, yes and no, but like mostly no, because regardless of, if you draw out that timeline, like, okay, this was a significant spike in load versus this was like not a spike in load when this happened, but potentially a spike in stressors. It matters, but in some ways it also doesn't matter, because what you have to do is deal with the person that's standing in front of you right now. And what pain does is it changes their movement strategy. So you will see people online saying like movement doesn't matter. The movement stuff doesn't matter. It was a spike in load that, like there was a very clear spike in load that caused the issue. Correct. Usually, yes, there was a very clear spike in load that caused the issue. They didn't move differently before and after. Are coming up to the issue. So why would you go after changing their movement strategies? Well, because usually pain changes the movement strategies. So now the person is standing in front of me. I have to deal with, yes, we have to manage your load correctly and your lifestyle potentially correctly. But we also have to manage the fact that almost certainly with a chronic issue, your movement strategy has changed. Now, when we change pain, we can sometimes that will unravel itself, and you will just go back to moving more like you did before. I won't say exactly like you did before, because there's no such thing as exact anyway. We're always changing, but more like you did before. You had a groin issue and you didn't like to like stretch your abs and get any rib cage elevation for 12 months because that was quite painful, or you didn't like to brace down because that was painful, or you didn't like to like abduct or something like this. So you avoided it. So you kind of lost that movement. Now, potentially, when pain starts to go away, your body starts to use that movement again. There is a little bit of that, but to be honest, more often I see it's not cut and dry now, black and white. But more often I see that they just don't. Yeah, they don't, because just because the pain is potentially gone or lessened. I don't know. I spoke about this in a previous podcast, that the nervous system seems to just continue on with the patterns that it has been using. So we do need to re-educate movement wise, I think, and show it that it's safe, not because how you moved your hip caused this chronic issue. No, but because now that you had the chronic issue, it changed how you moved your hip. So we need to sometimes potentially re-educate that. So I don't think there's a massive difference, Virgil, between okay, the issue was caused with a massive spike in load versus I think it's how they actually move their body. It's hard to tell which of those it is. It will always be associated with load, in my opinion, and then movement strategies will potentially amplify their likelihood to pick up an issue. I won't say you certainly couldn't predict any issues based on movement strategies, but you just need to, I guess what I'm saying is you just need to look at the person in front of you, and a good training plan is going to address all of the factors that you believe are contributing, and is going to progress as you see fit, as the person in front of you can progress. So what that means is, let's say you get a super chronic groin or abdominal pain, that's the words you use, so I'm just going to use those words. So like, right, let's mini like pretend case study. This person comes in, they've had pain there for a year, blah 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 blah. So you see that like they have very tight hips, for example. That's not uncommon. You see that this cropped up around the time that they had started. They went up a level in their football training, and they went from training twice a week to 4 times a week. And you also see, so the other part of your question was that where does strength come in? It's hard to get a clear read on strength when pain is a possible inhibitor. So you also see that like it looks like they're quite weak in that groin. So there's a few things there. Number one, nothing will work unless you manage their load correctly, and correctly is very tricky to understand, and there's no right or wrong exactly, but unless you get load under control, nothing will work. So like you can start to open up all this nice range of motion at their hip, you can start to make them stronger, but if they keep training at an intensity and a volume and a frequency that is more than their body can handle, which is specific to their body, then it is irrelevant, to be honest, what you do at their hip. I won't say irrelevant, actually. I'll actually reverse that. I won't say irrelevant, because I've seen people that have been told, actually every month, basically, I see people that have been told this amount of load is way too much for you right now, and that is why you have an Achilles problem or groin problem or whatever. And actually we do change how they move. We do open up a little bit of space, and suddenly now they're able to handle that much amount of load. It's also an interesting point to think about. Okay, why is it my right groin and not my left groin? I presume you have, I know I'm going back on myself here, but I presume you do have 2 legs. And I presume when you do your marathon training or whatever, you run on 2 legs. So the load is not too much for your ankles. It's not too much for your knees or your hamstrings. It's too much for your right groin. Why not your left groin? And sometimes that will lead people to say, well, it's my right groin is not as strong as my left groin. Well, why? Because I presume you did move for your entire life using both legs and both groins. So why is there a strength discrepancy? Potentially that does come back to how you move. Why is the load too much? That is an important question rather than just jumping to the load is too much. So movement efficiency is really, really important. It is underestimated, and you can change a lot of issues. If you can solve problems for clients without having to reduce the load, you become invaluable as a practitioner if you can do that. If everyone else is saying you need to reduce your training load, and you can actually open up space or help them, it's not the amount of load that is going through their body that's going through their body. It is how the load is being distributed across their body. And actually, it seems like this one area is taking on way too much work for some kind of reason where, okay, you get a massive like pelvic drop on that side. You have very little lateral hip strength. You have very little hip internal rotation. You don't have any ankle stiffness on that side because of a previous injury. There's a lot to like unpack there, but you don't have to always address load. You're always addressing load no matter what you do. But one is like, okay, I'm going to address your load across the week. Okay, we need to drop this run. We need to make sure you bring your sprints down to 75 or 80 or 5% instead of 90% or whatever, for example. Another way is to change how you load and address load by changing how your body actually moves and distributes load. So that was I guess an important tangent, because I was going to go down the easy answer there, which is like you just have to slowly reintroduce load and big it up and make it better over time, or more load over time. But that's not the true answer. The true answer is what I just said. Actually, I see time and time again people who have been around the houses looking at chronic issues, and load has been reduced, tried to build it back up, they get stuck again, strength has been addressed, blah blah blah, and then we just change, like we just open up some relative motion, some space, and like suddenly they can deal with that amount of load. So sometimes I go for the lazy answer, but that is the true answer, is that you can change how they manage load by changing their movement efficiencies and how they disperse load across their body and their system. But to kind of go back, you're still, the original question is like, is there different approaches? Still not really, because I'm still going to look at the person in front of me and say, okay, I still need to manage your load. I still need to write you a training plan, which means managing load doesn't mean necessarily doing less. It might mean doing more. It might mean doing more of one thing and less of another thing. It might just mean like spreading it out across the week better, blah, blah, blah. And I'm usually gonna, when you say movement issues, I wouldn't phrase it in that way, but I'm still going to address movement. So let's say it's a first session. I'll try and give you like some practical examples. Actually, let's talk about the foot and ankle, because most of you have got the foot, ankle, and Achilles program. So this will, when I speak practically, this will help frame it for you. So let's say someone has so I'm not going to name a specific problem, some problem down there around the foot or the ankle or the calf or something like that. If you look at phase 1 of the foot program, I have kind of done 3 different things. One, in the foot program, I've done one thing, which is open up relative motion. So you're doing the pronation exercises, the 3 different ones, which means you're opening up relative motion at the foot and the ankle, and getting that shin dropping and that knee moving and all of this stuff. So we are helping you open up space where you don't have space, which helps disperse load across the joints rather than maybe across fewer amounts of joints that are moving versus ones that aren't moving. So we're opening up relative motion. That's number 1. I don't say this explicitly in the program, but if you're looking at like the exercises and you see how they're laid out, you will see what's happening. So 1, we're opening up relative motion, opening up space, helping you disperse load across the joints, which also helps with sensation as well. You're helping like just feel the area, feel different parts of your body, which can help your brain to maybe interpret the area a bit better. 2, we're looking for before I say that. So 1, we're opening up relative motion. 2, we're doing some floating heel type of work in standing. So we're actually teaching you to freeze degrees of freedom in those movements. We're teaching inter and intramuscular coordination, more intermuscular coordination. Obviously, there's always intra involved, where you're moving one area, in this instance, like the floating heel hinge, you're moving one area, which is the hip, while you're trying to freeze degrees of freedom, freeze relative motion at the foot and the ankle. And so there's like co-contractions involved there. So that's the second thing. Number 1, open up relative motion. Number 2, learn to freeze relative motion or stop it or co-contract. And number 3, then we have the calf bridge, which is learn to get a very strong contraction in the target area, which is really good for decreasing any inhibition there. So if I was to break down a simple first session with someone, I would often, regardless of the body part, I would often try and tackle their movement, but it's not like I'm just trying to change your movement strategy or address compensation or pain or whatever. I'm usually going to scorched earth. I just said scorched earth because it was funny for Instagram, or like it would get more likes on Instagram, but it's not scorched earth. It's more like scorched earth is like a flamethrower. It's more like I don't know what it would be like. It's more like what's less than a flamethrower. It's more like the thing that you light if you have like a fire lighter in your fire and you have that clicker fire thing where it clicks. It's not a match, obviously. It's more like that clicker thing that you can hold it up. It's that little clicker lighter flame thing, and you can hold it up to the fire lighter, and then that lights the fire lighter. But you can kind of move that around and light a few different things with that. So you don't start with scorched earth flamethrower where you just light everything on fire. You also don't start with a match where you're trying to light one very small specific thing on fire. You start with that clicker thing, if someone knows what that is, the clicker lighter thing, and you're able to light a few things on fire. So one thing you're going to light on fire is relative motion. You're going to open up relative motion in the area that they're having problems. It can always be done, and that it's not just about like more range of motion. It's about getting the joints to interact a little bit differently with each other. Second thing, you're going to teach them to freeze degrees of freedom. So lock up, get some co-contractions around the area. So now all the muscles around the area have to like coordinate together. And then the third thing is you're going to get a very strong, you're going to look for a very strong but smooth contraction in like the target muscle that you're trying to target, or muscles. So strong and smooth is important. It's not just like, okay, push as hard as you can for 2 seconds. It actually can be that, but like a really nice smooth contraction. If you see the calf bridge where I'm teaching you to get the heel off the floor in the right way. I'm teaching you to feel the distal soleus in the right way. Not just like, I'm teaching you to feel what that feels like. And most people, especially people with Achilles issues, there's going to be inhibition in the soleus. A lot of the time, not necessarily all of the time, but a lot of the time, as evidenced by that calf bridge, because when they do that calf bridge, usually they've been doing calf raises with all this weight for years, and they do the calf bridge and they actually feel a way stronger contraction than before, and they get DOMS when they wake up the next day in their soleus, versus usually they wake up the next day and they have soreness in their Achilles. So it feels very, very different. So we're teaching a really strong, clean, smooth contraction, but a strong contraction in the target muscle. So that's where I use that clicker lighter thing. I'm lighting 3 different things on fire there. And obviously you're going to get like other secondary benefits along with that. So if we take that up to the hip up into the, what you said, the groin and the abs, what might we light on fire initially, regardless of if there was completely overloaded themselves, or like you said, our movement issues at play. So number 1, I'm going to light on fire, like, stop training like an idiot if you need to, or make sure you're getting out and walking and like not sitting on the couch all day now if you need to. Like, that one thing I'm going to light on fire is your load management, and like take away the noxious stimulus. If there's something you're doing in the gym that's causing a flare up, like stop doing that for a while, or reduce that. Or like, I don't just mean it's causing a little bit of pain. I mean like this is clearly causing issues. back off on that. So that's one thing, load management. Second thing is I'm probably going to like get that pelvis moving. So anterior, posterior tilt, scissor slides, things like that. Third thing, I'm going to look for a very strong contraction, like I said. So the pelvis is like relative motion. Third thing, I'm going to get a very strong, smooth, clean contraction. So I might think about doing something like a groin squeeze, so that you can. And I would set it up in a way that it's not a distal feeling in the adductors. It's proximal adductor that you're feeling, and it's not a pinchy feeling. It's a very strong, clean contraction. So you're able to feel like you're safe there. You can push hard there, but also you're not. But also you're accessing tissue that you don't potentially usually feel in a different way. So number one is load management. I'm going to light that on fire. Number two is opening, freeing up the pelvis. I'm going to light that on fire. Number three is a groin squeeze or like some kind of strong contraction. You'll hear like the way I'm saying groin squeeze. It's more isometric. The way I'm saying calf bridge for the ankle, it's more isometric. It just gives you a chance it gives you time to feel, okay, I can ramp this up 10%, 20%, 30%. It's not all or nothing. So I think the isometrics are nice for that, but it doesn't have to be an isometric, by the way. And then number four, if I wanted to go for number four, it would be probably more back to the relative motion bucket again. I'd probably give like, okay, kickstand hinge or something like that. Okay, we're going to go open up space at the back of the hip as well and make sure that we're loading your glute and your lateral hip tissues and stuff. That would be how I would like start off with the groin person like this. You did mention abdominal pain, and actually, to be honest, I don't want to sound like what I've said there is like I'm lighting 4 things on fire, 5 things. I'm not really. Like the pelvic tilts and the scissor slides and the kickstand hinge, like they all kind of go nicely together. The groin squeeze, the load management. And then I would probably, regardless if it was groin or abdominal pain, I would probably go for some kind of anterior core exercise, usually not a shortening exercise with groin and abs where like we're bracing and squeezing down. I usually see that that's what they're doing already. Something like deep core muscles, not like a sucking in or anything like that. So don't think about it that way. Just something that strengthens the anterior core and loads the anterior core in a pain-free manner. I do think that the Pilates people, I'm not saying do Pilates. You can if you want, it's cool. But I'm not saying the Pilates people I'm not saying do Pilates exercises, but I'm saying I've seen and spoken to a shit ton of people from different continents, different athletes who over the years they have had chronic abdominal, pubic, anterior hip and pelvis, blah blah blah, groin, and they've gone and done Pilates for 6 weeks, and it's like lessened significantly, and it seemed to be like so much core work, and I do think that is valuable. Just the right stuff. I think if you're doing shortening rectus stuff, it can make you worse. Certainly it can make your movement worse. It can brace you down even more. So I would try and light on fire like some kind of anterior core exercise as well as that. So from there, it's just about progressing on. I would keep all of those different things lit on fire, those beacons. I've lit them all. And then I would just try and every session stoke that flame a little bit more. If I'm going from the kickstand hinge, maybe I start to load the kickstand hinge. If I'm going for the groin squeeze, maybe I'm bringing that up into like a Copenhagen plank, for example, isometric there. Maybe I can do an adduct squeeze in more of a lengthened position rather than just a shortened position. I can do like a hinge with like a Zumo stance RDL where we're in a nice lengthened position. So I'm just continuing to light each of those fires, but the fires are building and building and building. So now it's getting more, eventually the fires just kind of all catch into each other, and then it becomes scorched earth. It does become scorched earth. It doesn't start scorched earth. Eventually, we're just addressing loads of things in a really nice way. So I hope that makes sense, Fergal. I hope that makes sense. It is a vague question, so be fair to me on that. And then the third part of your question, where does strength come in? It's hard to get a clear read on strength when pain is a possible inhibitor. It is hard to get a clear read on strength, and this is why I really don't. I don't love the manual muscle tests that people do, where it's like, oh, you have pain in your right groin or your right hip. I'm going to test you on the table with my hand pushing down into your leg. Oh, you're weaker on the right side than the left side. Duh, like obviously because I'm in pain there. Who is stronger when they're in pain on one side? It's very unlikely. It's not impossible, but it's very unlikely that you're going to be stronger there. So like you already know that they're in pain there. You already know that they've been in pain for a while. I'm not saying muscle testing can be nice, like as part of diagnostics for an injury or what tissue is sensitized. Like you can kind of isolate different directions, and I do that as well. Like you're trying to feel like, okay, is it this or that? How does it feel when you push here? How hard can you push? Like all that stuff is definitely valuable. Just don't hang your hat on it, but it's definitely valuable. But if you're doing like manual muscle testing as a pure strength test, I'm not so sure about that. So how to get a clear read on strength when pain is a possible inhibitor? You don't really need to get a clear read on. I don't think you need to get that clearer read on strength, because again, you're just going to meet someone where they're at, and you're going to load them more and more over time and make them stronger. My bias is just make people stronger regardless. I know that online you might see people saying strength isn't a contributing factor, blah blah blah, to this injury or this injury. Fine, fair enough, but like, okay, if I leave them to their own devices and time is going to make them fucking weaker, because let's just extrapolate that out and say, okay, you're not going to load someone, you're not going to make them stronger. Well, okay, let's say in 10 years time they haven't done any strength work. Are they going to be stronger or weaker than now? They're going to be weaker. So like, I'm still going to make them stronger. So just make them stronger while understanding that pain is an inhibitor. And that is where, in my mind, isometrics can come in handy, because you can help decrease a bit of inhibition by getting to a level of a contraction and holding it there and pushing a little bit more. And it gives you time to interpret the sensations and so on. So that is my vague answer to your vague question, Fergal, but I hope it helps. Fergal is in Leitrim in Ireland, I think, aren't you, Fergal? And anyone that knows Leitrim knows Fergal is the only good thing to come out of Leitrim. Let's just say that. I'm only joking, Fergal, but that's a compliment to you. Okay, next question. So I know the goal for the pelvis is for it to be able to move, and no, no offense to anyone else from Leitrim. Chris is writing to me here. Hello, Chris. I can do a mini seminar from Alice. Mentorship in putting the foot down and being a grumpy. I can't read the rest of it. Okay, Chris. Okay, I know the goal for the pelvis is for it to be able to move anterior to posterior. But do you think it's worse to be stuck in one or the other? I think that's not exactly. So yeah, this is the type of question that gets you cancelled online now in this world. It's like the answer is yes, you need to be able to move your pelvis from one to the other. But do you think it's worse? Like if someone comes in, is it worse that they're stuck in posterior tilt? Stuck means like they just can't really get out of it. They might have some movement, but like they just don't have that much movement, or an anterior tilt. It depends. It depends on the task that the person wants to be able to perform. If they want to be able to sit on the couch better, then it's worse to be stuck in an anterior tilt, because when you sit in the couch, you want to be able to slouch and relax and like, kind of just fall back, which needs your pelvis to be able to your spine to flex a bit, and your pelvis to be able to posterior tilt or roll under a little bit. So if you're stuck in an anterior tilt, that's worse. You want to be able to get into that slouchy position. If you want to be able to do anything remotely athletic, except for maybe rowing, then it's worse to be stuck in a posterior tilt. So let's look at it this way. If you want to be able to move, if you want to be able to walk and run and do things with fluidity and a little bit dynamic, you need your pelvis to be able to move. But if you look at people who are stuck, are more stuck. Like, I'm not saying anyone is completely stuck, but people are more stuck. Who moves worse? People that are more stuck in a posterior tilt or an anterior tilt? Excuse me. I think the fluff from the microphone gets into my throat. Who moves worse? People who are stuck in a posterior tilt or an anterior tilt? There is one very clear answer here. It is people that are stuck in a posterior tilt. Who can you think about that is stuck in a posterior tilt or more of a posterior tilt? Old people. Look at how old people walk, how they do everything. You'll often see that if you think of an older man, right, a 70-year-old man, you all probably have someone that you can think of, an 80-year-old man. You know the way they wear a shirt tucked into their pants and they have a belt buckle, a belt on? Always the front of their belt is like up around their belly button, above their belly button sometimes. And then they're like, it's partly because I don't know, they have no shape to their waist anymore, but it's also because they have absolutely no arse. Older men just seem to lose their arse so quick, so they get like this nappy arse that hangs down, and then the front of the belt buckle tucks up. So they're stuck in more of a posterior tilted position, and those people stay back on their heels. They take smaller steps. They are trying to move forward, but their pelvis and their spine and their rib cage, which is like coming backwards, is pulling them back. They don't ever commit to longer strides. They don't ever get to the front of their feet. They shuffle from heel to heel to heel. Interestingly enough, these are the postures that a lot of the people in the breathing and PRI world, they try and get you into almost all of the time. And not that that's a bad thing, because if you're really far one way, maybe they're helping you get back the other way. But if you do look at a lot of the people that end up in those systems for a long time, guess what? They end up really stuck in those positions. They really struggle to extend an anterior tilt, and I don't mean that in a mean way or anything. It is just obvious. Is just, I won't say obvious, might not be obvious to everyone, but it's just what I see a lot of the time from those people. Versus, let's take someone who's more stuck in an anterior tilt. I see great athletes all the time, like super like anterior tilted, and like can't get out of extension that much. Like top sprinters, top footballers, top everyone. Because an anterior tilt helps you move forward. It can be too much. It can be way too much. It can be potentially harmful for your hamstring. Like if you're stuck there, blah, 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 all this stuff. But I see a lot of people who are very, very athletic that are very far forward and very stuck in more anterior tilted and extended positions. So the answer for both of these is to be able to help them access one and the other. Absolutely. But if I was to choose which you want to be stuck in, give me an anterior tilt all day long. And I just cannot see an argument for the other way around. One is look at your TV and look at the Raheem Sterling and all these footballers on television. I don't even want to point out one person, because I'm not saying they are necessarily stuck there, but like they're super anterior tilted, versus one is like, look out your window and look at the old person walking. They're super posterior tilted. The old men in particular, they're super posterior tilted and they cannot go anywhere. They shuffle. So I know I'm comparing young with old here now. I know I'm comparing young with old. It's not apples and apples, but I'm not trying to compare apples with apples. I'm trying to look at some people who are stuck in posterior tilt, which is very clearly the easiest person to pick is like an older man person with the shirt tucked in and the belt buckle and walking on my heels and shuffling along. And the other one is like a very athletic person who's more stuck in an anterior tilt and is like very dynamic. Not apples with apples, but I'm just trying to choose a very clear population of one and very clear population of the other. So I would choose not to be stuck in either. That's the answer. That's the answer, especially on Instagram, because you get cancelled if you say anything else. But that is the correct answer. But if I had to choose, if you're like, you have to choose one or the other, I'm taking anterior tilt all day long. It means I can get forward. It means I can get on my feet. It means I can extend, which is how I is propulsion. It's how I push through the floor. It means I can commit to one foot, get forward, commit to the other foot. I might just have a tight back along with it. Okay, final question. Excuse me. I never usually cough like this. Final question. Who do you look up to in the industry? I don't really look up to people that much. I don't know, is that the right like word for me? Not that I don't look up to, not that I don't admire people or whatever. I don't really look in life, like I don't really look up to people that much. I have admiration for people in certain ways, but I don't really look up to them that much. I don't know. I don't want that to sound arrogant. It's not that I'm putting myself on the same on the same level as anyone or anything like that. I'm just saying I don't really look up to anyone. I don't think about it that way. I really like seeing people who have a bit of longevity in the industry and integrity and like a good CV. So like someone, when I saw that question, someone like Dan Paff comes to mind, who has a really good CV, who has a lot of longevity. He's been doing it for a long time. Obviously, the CV is like he's worked with great people. He's taught great people. He's done lots of great things, and he's clearly very, very smart. And then he seems to have a lot of integrity as well. Like he seems to do things in the right way. Now, I'm not sure. I don't know him, and I actually don't know that much about him either. So maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. But that's someone that came to mind when I read that question. Who also came to mind is like I admire people who have something that they're really interested in and they really go after it. And that I think we all do, whether you realize it or not. Like I think when we watch tennis or when we watch basketball or when we watch like a really good singer or a good artist or someone who just loves uh taking cars apart and putting them back together, or someone who loves like knitting or something. I think we all have admiration for someone who really just likes their craft, whether it's their job or not. I think when we look at people and we think like they're cool, what we're really admiring is not the knitting. What we're admiring is like this person must have put a lot of time into this, and it's just cool that they really like this thing. When I watch like chess videos on TikTok, I'm looking at Magnus Carlsen, and I don't have a clue what he's saying. I don't have a clue what chess move he's making. I cannot relate to him in any way, shape, or form. I don't look up to him. Don't think I'd like that life, but I have admiration that someone basically from, I don't know, 4 years of age dedicated their whole life to this craft. That is what I admire. So when I think about other people in the industry, I really admire people who have, I'm not saying to the level of Magnus Carlsen, the best chess player ever, but people who really like something and they keep doing that thing. So someone that comes to mind is like Jake. Jake loves patellar tendons, and like I admire that. I would have done a patellar tendon program. 5 years ago or 4 years ago or 3 years ago. It's always been on my mind to do it, but I never have because of Jake. And it would be very different to his program and all that, but I've never done it because I admire him so much. So, that's someone that comes to mind that I have admiration for. Someone like Matt, someone like Jonas in Speedworks, like people like that. I admire. It's not that you look up to these people or that you agree with everything or that you want to be them or any of that stuff. I just admire someone who has dedicated to their craft for a long time and like clearly has gotten very, very good at it. That is what I admire. I spoke about like PRI in the last question where I'm saying like PRI I think they end up getting stuck in these postures. But guess what? Someone who I admire almost one of the most in the entire industry is Ron Haruska, the founder of PRI. I have so much respect for that man. I disagree with so much of it in terms of at least practically what they do with people. I disagree, but I think some people think that like that needs to be like an emotional thing, or that you must really like want to hate this guy and blah blah blah. No, when I used to watch those videos, like Kira would be sitting on the couch and I'd be watching a video and I'd be pissing myself laughing. And that might sound weird to other people who have watched the videos because a lot of people say that he's not a good teacher. And that he's super cryptic and hard to understand, and they have to do a course 15 times to even have any idea. And then when there's another teacher, like it works much better. But like I used to love it. I used to absolutely love it because I'm just looking at a guy who has thought so deeply about what he's saying, and it's not necessarily, it's not even like, and he's also super intelligent and passionate, and seems like he has a lot of integrity to me. I'm not saying you need to think he's right, but I think he believes he's right, and I think he believes he has a lot of integrity. He has a lot of integrity with what he's saying. So I have a lot of admiration for that man. I think he's absolutely brilliant, and while simultaneously disagreeing with so much. I don't know. Like, I think we should be able to do that. I'm actually smiling thinking about him because just some of the funny analogies that he has, which I don't know, don't even make sense. Like one of the videos, he was like putting up pictures of like how a right calf, someone with, I think it's like a massive right calf or something because they're using the right calf for propulsion. And that's instead of the right glute max. And I think it's on the, I can't remember now. This is like God knows how many years ago, but he's like putting up a slideshow and he's putting up pictures of like different right calves and different right quads and different right lower backs and stuff, like where there's a lot of hypertrophy. And he's like, how about this for a glute max? And it's a picture of a right calf. How about this for a glute max? And it's a picture of a quad. How about this for a glute max? And it's a picture of a lower back. And like that to me is hilarious. That is so funny. That is so funny, and that is a man that is dedicated to his craft for a long time. Who else? I really admire someone like Gary Ward in the same vein, who's like, again, I disagree. Not, I won't say I disagree with him, but like when I see a lot of the practitioners and I look at what they actually end up using in clinic with people and like the explanations they have for like, okay, I looked at every single joint motion in this phase of gait, and then we tried to replicate this phase of gait, and then we had added a wedge here, and this was the thing that unlocked everything, and blah blah blah. Like, I just don't think that's a smart way of working ultimately. And I know some people will be listening from that world. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. If it works for you, it works for you. I just think there's better ways of doing that. So please don't get emotional, or do if you like. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But at the same time, like, Gary has clearly spent a lot of time learning his craft and honing it and thinking about it and figuring it out and teaching it and changing it and tweaking it like that. There's so much to be admired for that. For in my mind, I don't really look up to him. I don't want to be him. I don't want to teach in that way, and I don't want to treat in that way. But I have massive admiration for what he does. Even if and I'm sure if you asked him, he'd probably say much worse things about me than I would say about him. He'd probably say it's absolute dog shit. So yeah, those are the types of people that I admire, people who are really dedicated to their craft. And it's usually like more niche. It's usually like one thing, which is maybe ironic because I'm here speaking about God knows everything, or that does that make sense? I'm here speaking about everything and anything on the podcast. So I'm not doing what I say I admire, which is like niching down and speaking about one specific thing. Maybe I should do that and be better at that. Maybe it would be better for our business. Sometimes I do feel like that if I did niche down better. But I think our niche is helping coaches. Ultimately, our niche is, and moving more towards that, and it's going to be helping coaches and practitioners get way better results with their clients and be much happier with the work that they do in the industry, and also have a much more successful career in the industry. So that niche is kind of our niche. And then within that is like, okay, here you need to understand the foot stuff. Here you need to understand the hip stuff. Here you need to understand load management. Here you need to understand communication. Here you need to understand a little bit of business. Here you need to understand how to charge, how to market, how to I don't know, to talk on a podcast. Here you need to understand how to post on Instagram and attract clients, and here's how to onboard clients. So like within our niche, there's all of this stuff that you need to understand. But ultimately our niche is It might not look like that on Instagram always because I'm talking about different things and I'm talking to kind of different people, which is a problem as well, which I can speak about another time. But on the podcast, I'm very clearly talking to coaches and therapists, even though there are other people listen, which is fine too. I'm happy to have you guys, but I'm not curating the content for you guys. I'm curating the content for coaches and therapists. That's who I'm speaking to. And then you guys are really interested and you listen to and you leave comments and stuff. Brilliant. Keep doing that. I actually love seeing that. I actually really love seeing when someone is not a coach and therapist and they listen and they're just really interested. That's how I started as well. But I am curating the content for coaches and therapists, and our niche is not the knee or the shoulder or whatever. It's helping you navigate the industry better, creating clarity when others are creating confusion in oh, I did this course and now I don't know whether I should lie them. Should I be breathing on my right side or my left side with this client? Should I how do I progress? Does this there's so much confusion around models and business and how should I work with people? How should I talk to people? Our job is to create a lot of clarity. This is and clarity, and that ultimately results in you getting better results with your clients, enjoying your job more, and being much more successful in the industry and getting the reputation that comes along with that from your peers, the reputation that comes along with that from your clients, and then the revenue that comes along with that. No, I wouldn't say revenue, the profit that comes along with that, which allows you to have a happier life, look after your family, all that stuff. I'm trying to very clear on that's what I'm going to help you guys do in our mentorships, in our workshops, in our programs, all of that. It's all leading towards that. Ultimately, that's the top of the tree for me. So those are the questions I think for today. Hopefully they are helpful. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment, please. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Give me some feedback. Let me know some questions for next time. Please keep that going. That's been invigorating for me to see that. If you're not watching on YouTube, then make sure you click subscribe or whatever. So click subscribe on YouTube too. Click subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on. Leave 5 stars if you haven't done that already. Share it on your Instagram story, a little clip, or just a screenshot of you listening, please. Something like that. Do something this time to share. And don't forget to check out our products, Lower Body Basics 1, where I start with my hip, hamstring, groin, knee clients, all that stuff, pelvis, lower back. Lower Body Basics 2, just a progression from LBB1. Our foot, ankle, and Achilles program, where I start with our calf, shin, ankle, plantar fascia, big toe, all that stuff, lower leg. Clients, upper body basics, shoulders, scaps, upper back, necks, elbows, wrists, all that stuff. Core basics, trunk, like midsection. I actually spoke about the abdominal stuff that in Fergal's question, like I would use a lot of core basic stuff there with those abdominal and groin clients. So check that out. And then DGR Interactive, check that out, where we go much deeper, but where there's 1,000 coaches and therapists learning with us, but we go much deeper into everything. But everyone that's in there starts with the programs first, or at least one of the programs first. Everyone, because it just means you get a flavor for what we do in a very practical way. So check out DGR Interactive if you're interested in learning more. You only need about 15 minutes a week. And then all our workshops are currently sold out, but we will be announcing one in Waterford in our gym pretty soon. That will be released to our DGR Interactive members first. I hope that they gobble it up, but if not, we'll release it then to our email list from there. And I want to really make that event like really cool, where we have potentially like a fun event on the Friday. It doesn't mean you have to be there for it, but our team is going to go and do like a hike or something like that, or like depending on the weather, something nice, something fun on the Friday, and then have a drink that night. And then the workshop is Saturday and Sunday. So for the people who buy tickets to this workshop, you will be invited to the Friday event as well. I know a lot of people will be flying in, so don't feel like, I shouldn't even talk about this yet because we haven't released the tickets yet, but don't feel like if you can't get to the Friday, it doesn't mean you're still getting the workshop like you would have come to any other workshop. It's just if you could make the Friday afternoon or Friday evening event, or Friday morning, depending on what it is, schedule that in as well. But more details will be sent out to our DGRI members hopefully in the next week or two. That's it for me. I need to go. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and talk to you all next time.